Hey folks, I'm Mike. Do you hate ads? I hate ads. You know what I like? Patreon.com/inkdependence. It keeps this blog ad-free. Hey folks, I'm Mike and this is InCoWriMo. Today we're doing another Q&A video. Thank you for the great response on the previous Q&A video. That was totally awesome. And keep those questions coming. I'll keep doing these Q&A videos. I'm going to try to keep doing them on Fridays. Today is obviously not a Friday, and the reason that everything's been a little bit pushed back is because of food poisoning. Food poisoning is the worst. Try not to get that if you have a choice. Audrey and I both got some food poisoning. She really got wrecked. Just hours and hours of very unpleasant times, and she's still recovering. So she had some solid food today, so if you heard about this problem before, you're like, oh no, how is she? She's recovering, but she had to miss the LA Pen Show because obviously she can't go to a pen show in LA while standing up is severely taxing in all respects. So, thanks for your concern, and she's getting better. So, there you go. So skip food poisoning. If anybody says, hey, would you like some food poisoning? Say no. Good. Okay, cool. I've got a bunch of questions. Some of them came through the Instagram. Some of them came through the Slack. I'm pretty sure I copied them all down, but if I missed it, didn't get to your question, please let me know in the comments and I will try to put in the next one. So there you go. So lots of stuff. I'm going to try to keep my answers kind of short-ish just so that we can get through this. So first things first, a little coffee. Trader Joe's has some good coffee. This is just regular old Joe. I'm a big fan. All right. So first question is from Sergeant Stretch on the Pen Addict Slack. Also, if you haven't been on the Pen Addict Slack, make sure you get on the Pen Addict Slack because it's cool. Sergeant Stretch asks, do you prefer sheen or shading in the ink? And my answer's got to be that I prefer sheen a bit. And that's because I like to use big nibs. So I use wet nibs, I use broad nibs, music nibs I love. Anything below a medium is probably going to not work super well for me. I like big nibs. And so if I'm using a big nib, I like to be able to show off some of the awesome stuff that ink can do. And one thing that it can do is it can sheen. Also, I like my ink saturated. You've probably noticed that by watching the channel and looking at the blog and all that sort of thing. But yeah, extra saturation, I'm into it. And a lot of these saturate inks also have sheen in them. And so I like that. But I also love some shading. I've got no problem with shading. And like I said, I use big nibs. And so shaders work really well on big nibs. So there you go. That's that. Second question from Sergeant Stretch is this. How many letters have you written for InCoWriMo so far? If you're not aware of InCoWriMo, this is a thing that Eric Orozco started, I don't know, a couple years ago anyway, where you, every day in the month of February, you write a letter or send a letter to someone. And that is a very cool program. So it is currently the 18th of February, and I have written zero letters is how many I've written for InCoWriMo. Sorry. I haven't done that. Mostly just, I totally meant to, and I think it's awesome, and I want to write more letters. I've got a couple letters I'm going to respond to that were sent to me with, I got a bottle of ink from somebody, and I traded some pens with somebody, and I'll show you those pens here in a little bit. I haven't written anything back, because I've been crushed with work. Too many classes right now to fit in other stuff. Also, that's why the blog is and the channel are a little bit slow right now. It's probably going to persist for the next month or two. So if that's a problem, please hang in with me, and the summer will bounce back. It'll be crazy videos. At least that's my hope. Also, I'm hoping to do some more stuff at pen shows. I haven't been able to do much video at pen shows. I'm hoping that changes. All right, so that's it for that one. Hot Cup 11 asks, what's your favorite pen to try out new inks? That's a super good question, but my answer is going to be, I've got a couple that I can show you right quick that are super good for that. But the most important thing is knowing how your pen performs. So if you're thinking about getting into ink reviews, or you're thinking about trying out new inks, or you're getting like a lot of samples, I have a drawer of samples over here that I'll show in response to another question. My answer is just know the ink, or know the pen that you're using, because that'll tell you a lot about the ink. So in case you're curious how I keep my pens straight, I have this box that says pens to be cleaned. And it looks like this, and it is chock full of pens. I mean, that's a lot of pens. So I've got a lot of cleaning ahead of me, and some of my favorite testing pens are in here. So this one is probably, I've said it before, I think this is my favorite pen. This is a Franklin-Christoph Panther 40. You can't get this finish or this this banding anymore, at least not currently. This is like the very first prototype of this pen. I've had it for ages and ages, way before Audrey even considered you know, working in fountain pens or even using fountain pens all that much, really. This has a broad stub nib. Is one of the Mike Masuyama grinds, and it is a fantastic nib, and I know exactly how it works. I know how it responds to other inks, and I know I'm just so familiar with this pen that it's a great review pen. Also easy to clean out because I can totally take every piece apart and get all the ink out of it, so I know I've got it clean. Other pens that are like that, I like using TWSBIs for review pens. I've got a VAC Mini over here. I've got a VAC 700 I use sometimes. I used to use my 540 a lot, but I haven't used that for a review in a while. I actually haven't used the VAC in a while either, the big VAC. I've been using mostly the smaller VAC because those are very easy to clean and dry out, and it's very quick. I don't like using piston fillers for reviews. I've got some piston fillers, and I love piston fillers, but they are harder to clean out. And so for somebody who needs to be switching inks all the time, I want to be able to be sure that I get all the ink out and that I can clean it kind of efficiently. So there's that. Also good for ink reviews. These guys, this is a Faber-Castell loom. Anything that has a Faber-Castell on it is going to have a good nib as far as I can tell, and the nibs are interchangeable and they're, you know, very consistent, and so I know how those work. Also all my Franklin-Christoph pens, honestly, and my Custom 74. I've got 2 of those now, I'll show you them later. But those are great for ink reviews because they have different sorts of flow. You want some fine nibs, you want some wet nibs and dry nibs, you want all that kind of stuff to sort of figure out how the ink works. So that's that. It's kind of a variety of things, but mostly know your pen. All right, next one. J11 on Instagram says, hey, can you recommend a dark red? Totally can. I use a lot of reds. As you know, of course, and so I've been using some dark reds recently, and I made some notes because I was like, oh, what haven't I used in a while that still is worth mentioning? So one that I'm working on right now, ink review coming soonish, is Papier Plume's Lover's Red. If you're not familiar with Papier Plume, get thee to the Papier Plume. Either find it at Anderson Pens, which sells it, or find it at Papier Plume itself. You can find those easily online. But Lover's Red is super dark. Like, in one pen I was using in this Diplomat Arrow, and the arrow is it's got a fine nib, which is not particularly fine. It's actually a pretty wide fine, but it's also pretty wet. And when you write with that thing, it looks like you're writing in like red-black. Like, it's so dark. But this is really kind of a burgundy, right? Like a dark burgundy, or like a really dark maroon. So if that's the shade you're looking for, that's a good one. Franklin-Christoph's Urushi Red is still recognizably red, but quite dark, as opposed to being like a super dark burgundy. Diamine Oxblood is one of those ones that everybody knows about. I think you've probably heard of that one for sure, and that's a really good ink for you know, if you want like a dark, like bloody ink. It is as advertised, so if you want that, go for that. I think like Hitchcock from Mont Blanc a while ago was that kind of red as well, but I didn't get a hold of that one, so I missed it. Next one is actually 2 because they're very close to being the same ink, and these are 2 from Noodler's. Noodler's Nikita, which has been around and widely available for a long time, and Noodler's Park Red. Both of them are dark reds, but still a very recognizable red. It's not some other thing that's like, yeah, it's close to red. No, it's definitely a red, but it's dark red. The only issue with those is the dry time is pretty long. So if you're using it on something like Rhodia, or if you're a lefty, the dry times are going to extend, right? It'll dry eventually, but it'll take a little while. So check those out. All right, cool. Next, Julia VDW on Instagram asks, how long do I keep ink samples? And the answer is kind of forever, as long as I haven't used them up. And often, I'll use most of an ink sample when I'm doing a review, but sometimes I have extras, sometimes I don't know, I've got some left. Sometimes it's a bigger sample than normal. If people send me samples, they usually send me more than like the 2 mils you used to get from the Goulet ink drop. I have a lot of Goulet ink drops from, I don't know, years ago. When I first started this blog, I was getting ink from Goulet, ink samples from Goulet, ink samples from I Sell Pens was the first place I got ink samples from. I haven't been back to that site in a while. I need to check them out. They were good to me, or at least they were good for me. Anderson Pens, of course, I've gotten a zillion from them. I've kind of switched over to them because they have the most and the best ink samples, I think. So here's a drawer. You might look at this drawer and say, Mike, you've got a problem, but I don't see a problem. These are ink samples that I've been meaning to get to and haven't yet. Some of the bags just fell on the floor because this is from an IKEA drawer, and this is just a drawer full of ink samples. Underneath it, I've got these racks I've got racks on racks. I've got some that are just in like baggies. I've got some that are in little bottles. This is Sazerac, which I've actually already reviewed, but it's still in here for some reason. I've got some in these little pots that somebody sent to me. Anyway, the question was how long do I keep them? And the answer is I keep them as long as I keep them, which is as long until I use them up, honestly. There's no particular reason to get rid of ink samples, as far as I can tell. They are sealed, these little vials that you get them in. Here we go. This is Lover's Red. You can see the dark red there, left over. These are like cryo vials, basically, and they're used for scientific purposes mostly. Little sample vials, you can grow stuff in them, they're great. You can freeze them, you can... I don't know if you want to autoclave them. I haven't asked Audrey about that, but you can do all kinds of stuff with these. And the rules for keeping ink a long time are the same as rules for keeping beer, or probably wine, really. And that is, put them in the dark, don't expose them to a bunch of sunlight because they will bleach out. You don't want to do that. And also, like, don't expose them to temperature extremes. So if it's just like keeping beer, if you want to keep it in your closet, cool. If you want to keep it in your fridge, cool. But dark, similar temperature, like, don't go nuts on the temperature. And they'll probably be good for a long time. I've got some Schaefer script ink that is my grandmother's, that is who knows how old. It's in the old bottle with the inkwell on the side. There's no reason to get rid of them until they go bad. How do you know if your ink has gone bad? If it's fuzzy, well, get the hell out of there. If it is thick, like you put a nib in there and it comes out as like a string, you don't want that. If it solidifies, I've got a couple of old organic studio inks that have like gone solid. If it is, if it smells super weird, like organic weird, not chemical weird, don't use it. Those are my guesses, or those are my tips. But other than that, just keep them. There's no reason to throw them out. Let's see. Stormy Weather on Instagram asks, how do I sort my swatches? And the answer to that is roughly and rarely. I keep them in these little rings, which means it is inefficient, and I've got a bunch more of these. These are just the ones that happen to be next to me, but they're more or less sorted by color. I think the question is really aimed at, do you sort them by color, or do you sort them by brand, or is it our name, or some other thing? And usually it's by color. These are not easy to actually fan out, honestly, but these are like blacks and grays and super dark browns and things like that, and I keep them kind of together. And then when I use them for an ink review, usually they end up in a little pile on my desk, and then eventually I will sort them back into the rest of the group. So yeah, I usually go by color. I think that's the most effective way for me, because when I'm looking for inks to show next to other inks, what I'm looking for is a color match and not like a brand match. So I don't really do brands, I just do colors. Oh, these are all a bunch of Robert Oster's. These have been in a drawer. They fell out of that drawer and I picked it up, and I gotta get to these soon. But oh, Robert Oster Tranquility. I need to put that in a pin today. That's going in the pin today because it's awesome. All right, next. Right on the nail at Instagram, my lovely wife Audrey asks, if you could ask a question to any brand or pen maker and they tell you the truth, what would you ask? I hope she didn't mean just one single question, because I don't know what that would be. I've got a couple, though, that, good questions for brands and makers. One is, I want to know more about ink chemistry. So what is it that gives ink that awesome sheening quality? How do you make sure that your ink isn't too dense when you put it together? I want to know these things. Like, I want to know the nitty-gritty of making inks. And I mean from scratch, not like, some other thing. Not like rehydrating something. There are some brands you can buy the powder and rehydrate it. That's pretty cool, but I want to know the nitty gritty. Like, how do you get these things? Secondly, I'd ask a brand like Sailor is the one that comes to mind. Like, hey, why don't you want our money? And what I mean by that is there are so many awesome Sailor inks out there. There are so many like pens that you can't get in the US, like those cool like carrot pens. Audrey really wants a carrot pen. It's a Sailor Pro Gear, which would fit her hand really well, I think. But it's got it's like green and red. It's a cute little pen. You can't get them here. Give us those things. Inks. There are brands over there that have inks that are fantastic. Like Kingdom Note has all kinds of cool ones. Of course, Bungbox has all kinds of cool ones. Let us have those, right? Bring them here. And it's not the case that they just don't make enough of them. I don't think that's it. I think they just don't sell them here, and that's weird. Just take my money, So that's that. Why don't you want my money? Thirdly, I want to know, like, issues of scale and organization. So like ink makers like Nathan Tardif at Noodlers. Nathan's like a one-man show as far as I know. I've heard he has a helper every once in a while, but I don't think he really uses one much. I want to know how the heck does he keep up with that, because he's got hundreds of different kinds of ink. They've got different qualities. Certainly you don't mix them together. I don't think that like how the hell do you do that? I picture him, you know, in a warehouse, like just stirring a big cauldron of ink or something, or like, I don't know, 55-gallon drums or something of ink, like pickled barrels of ink. I want to know what he does and how you do it. So that's what I would. And also, the restriction is they have to tell you the truth. I want the truth from Nathan because he's mostly pretty cagey. He doesn't want you to know, and that's fine. He's protecting his secrets and stuff. But also, like, I want to know. I'm curious. Inquiring minds, yo. All right. Let's see what else. Sir Jerkface from Slack asks, "Do you keep the chromatography strips from your ink reviews?" And the answer is yes. I keep all that stuff. And here are some of them. So I used to just sort of throw them in a. I had like manila folders, and that was a stupid way to do it. It didn't work out for me at all. It's just a mess. They get all intermingled. But now that I've sort of standardized the way I do things, I use rhodia pads. I use a lot of rhodia pads. I've got a bunch of them. I need more. I binder clip the chromatography strips up here. If I'm going to be using different kinds of paper, like this one, I use different sizes and different kinds. I've got. What else in here? This one I used Garden District Azalea. This is another papier plume. It's a nice pink. I use it on different kinds of papers and stuff, but I've got them all in there. They're all binder clipped together. And I do it until like a binder clip doesn't hold them, and then I start a new batch. So this is the current batch. So we've got Lucky Orange. Underneath that, you've got Schaefer Red. Underneath that, we've got franklin-christoph Ink 17, the Philly Pinchot one. But yeah, they all stay up here with this. If I can come up with a better way to keep them and sort them and stuff, I will, but I just haven't. So yeah, I can totally keep them. They're all right there. Let's see, what else? Paperlate. This is a very good question. Paperlate from Slack asks, what are my favorite inks or recommendations for fine or extra fine nibs versus broad nibs? I give this a lot of thought because, well, I'm serious about ink. And the answer is that I don't think the fine, extra fine versus broad thing is really the biggest question. The biggest thing is whether you have wet nibs or dry nibs, because I have some nibs like this one, which I'll show off in a little bit if I decide if I want to make the thing long enough, which is it's an extra fine nib, but it's also very wet, which is going to be entirely different from an extra fine nib that's very dry, or something like that. Like this little Vac Mini that Audrey got, the nib is a little bit messed up. And she's had some problems with TWSBI. They're kind of like mansplaining nibs to my wife, who works at Franklin-Christoph, and talks to Jim, the nibmeister, a lot about this. Anyway, it's a very dry sort of nib. It doesn't really work very well, and so it's going to take another different kind of thing. Also, you can get broad nibs that are pretty dry too. I've got some of those. So really what matters, I think, is flow more than size. But anyway, I've got a couple of things. So for fine or dry nibs, Aurora inks are great, especially Aurora Black. It flows like water. It's very, very wet. Maybe it flows faster than water. Whatever's faster than oil, I don't know. What's faster than water? Probably oil. It's very wet. So put that in a dry nib or a fine nib, and it works great. If you put that ink in a wet or a wet broad nib, like if you put it in a I don't know, like a broad Pelican or something, you're gonna have a bad time. It's just gonna blast out of that thing. You're not gonna want it. So yeah, Aurora. Secondly, Faber-Castell, I think, is a good ink for fine nibs or dry nibs. I haven't used one of those in a while, but I remember them being very good in those kinds of nibs. So check out Faber-Castells. Those nibs are all, or those inks are all great. I liked them all. For broad nibs or wet nibs, either way, Sailor inks especially, because they show off all kinds of awesome different colors and sheens and that kind of stuff, and they tend to be more saturated, so they're not going to perform maybe as well in a fine nib or in a dry nib. Noodlers inks, you can't generalize about Noodlers because they're too broad, but to the extent that you can, I would say that they're fairly saturated, and so put them in broader nibs. Also, they have all kinds of cool effects. You have these like interesting color combinations and that sort of thing. Private Reserve, same kind of jam, except for there are some of their inks that work perfectly well in smaller nibs or drier nibs. So I've been using Private Reserve's Blue Suede. which I just got from, or just re-got, I guess, from a guy on Slack. I used to have this ink a long time ago, and I ran out. It's one of the few bottles I've actually used entirely up. I love this ink, and it works great in fine nibs, wet nibs, dry nibs, whatever. So that's an exception. American Blue, I use that in all kinds of nibs. It always works perfectly, from Private Reserve. Diamine is very good for those kinds of nibs as well, the broader nibs or the wetter nibs. They tend to be a little oversaturated in most cases, and so it's good to use them in nibs that can really keep the flow going. Now, a lot of inks are perfectly good in either of them. So one that I like to point out is Roaring Klinger. This is Salix. Get it to focus in. This is a great ink. It is a blue-black. If you saw the post on Instagram where I asked for questions, I wrote that with this, and I wrote it in a fine nib that's pretty wet. I've also used this in fine nibs that are dry. I've used it in, I had a vanishing point for a long time that just did not work with anything except for Salix. It's the only thing that made it work right. It's a great ink, all-purpose. It is an iron gall ink, which some people are a little wary of. Don't worry about this one. It's very mild iron gall. The color does change over time, which is cool, but I've had it in lots of pens for extended periods of time, and I haven't had any problems. The exception is I haven't had it for a long time in a steel nib, I don't think. I've had it for a long time in gold nibs mostly. But, whatever. Clean your pen regularly-ish, and this will be totally fine. Also, franklin-christoph inks. Those have been great in all kinds of things. I mean, they sell everything from needle points up to music nibs, and the inks work great in those. Ackerman inks, I haven't had any problems with Ackerman inks in fine nibs or broad nibs or anything. They've all been great. So, there's some broad suggestions. But as I said, the biggest difference is between wet nibs and dry nibs, not necessarily the size. Robo Jim, he's got a couple of good questions here. The first one being, what unusual ink would you like to see in the future, whether an unusual property or some other thing? As far as like unusual colors, I love unusual colors. I'd love to see some like really cool grays. Grays are a tricky ink or a tricky color to make ink out of because they can be very dark. And so you can't tell the interesting characteristics. They can be too light, and so you can't tell the interesting characteristics. They've got all kinds of foibles. So a really cool gray. I was thinking like green gray would be awesome. I don't know of any off the top of my head that are like that. I want to see some awesome browns, some more awesome browns. I love cool browns. I'd love to see like a true waterproof orange. On the Lucky Orange post, I had some people come in and say, well, check out KWZ. They've got some oranges, and feeling, yeah, they're very, very dark oranges, not really like a bright one. But I want like a bright in-your-face orange. I also heard Operation Overlord orange from Noodlers is good. I haven't had a chance to look that one up, but yeah, true waterproof orange would be cool. Or like anything with orange, because orange. And lastly, there's some inks out there that are like glittery, and you got these like kind of party inks, but I'd like to see an ink that has like a holographic effect to it. Audrey, my wife, writeonthenail.com, has like holographic nail polishes on all the time, and those are super cool. And while we have Diamine, we have some J. Herbans that have like glitter and stuff in them. They're usually like silver or gold, and that's cool, but let's like really ramp up the party. Let's make it a rave up in this piece and have some like holographic in there, or give me like a holographic sheen and not just like silver or gold sheen, but like holographic. Yeah, do that. Second question that Robo Jim asks. Also, by the way, looking forward to meeting Robo Jim in Atlanta. So if you're coming to Atlanta, I'll probably be there. I'll look more or less like this, maybe without a beard. I don't know what we're going to do in Atlanta, but we'll see. He also asks, what am I looking to buy or try at the next pen shelf? So I want to try that flex nib that Kenro's been showing around from Aurora. I know people are in LA testing it right now. I'd like to try that out. $650 is real steep for my taste, but I'd like to try that out. I'd like to try out more stuff from DuPont. I want to try out more stuff from... it's kind of sound kind of silly, but maybe like some more stuff from TWSBI. I've tried out none of their stubs or calligraphy nibs. I've got like a medium and a fine. That's all I've tried out from them. I'd like to try out what else? I don't know. Anything else that's cool. That's what I want to try out. Stuff that I want to buy at pen shows. There's some nibs. There's some pens that are on my list. So like I want to get a Pilot 823. I'd like to get a Pilot with a music nib. I think that'd be cool. I want some more. I want like a Nice from the Platinum 3776 line. The Nice Pure, I think, is what I want because it's got that frosted matte finish. It's the silver. I think that's pretty awesome. I haven't seen one of those in a while. I kind of want to get one of those. Ryan Krusak has pens that I want to buy. I want the Big Legend. I don't know if he's made the Big Legend, but I want one of those. And if you haven't seen Ryan Krusak stuff, check out Ryan Krusak because he's amazing. Those are the things I'm looking at right now. I don't know, interesting sailor nibs, if I can find one in a price range that I can afford. Maybe if I can find like loose sailor nibs, somebody wants to trade some nibs or nib units. Pelican nibs, I got a couple of pelicans right now that I'd like to, maybe try out some new nibs for, that kind of thing. That's what I'm looking for. Cool paper, that kind of jazz. Yeah. All right. Let's see, what else what have I forgotten? There's one left. Poof. This is from Caribbean Sky, who I met in Dallas. Very, very pleasant person. Very nice to meet you, Caribbean Sky. She asks, if you had to start again, what would you do differently? Man, I think about that a lot because I like to think the channel and the blog are constantly evolving. And so some things that I'd do differently if I started over, I don't know, I think I'd try to ramp up the quality more quickly. I don't know, because like I've really upgraded the video quality. I've upgraded my sound quality. I hope it sounds good and you've noticed that. I've upgraded, I don't know, I've put my face on camera more. I think I'd probably do that more. I'd probably do more pens because I haven't done a lot of pens. I do them every once in a while, but ink has become kind of my thing. I do more pens, but I think starting off, I don't know, because I started off in a time when there weren't really that many ink and pen bloggers. I started off several years ago, and there were a few, but not that many. Like there was me, Brad Dowdy, Ed Jelly was doing awesome photography, still does, that guy. There are a few, but when I started off, there weren't that many that were doing it, and so I'd probably standardize a little bit sooner. But the thing is, I started off at a time when there weren't that many, and so you kind of had to find your way. And I still do it strictly as sort of a hobby and a fun thing to do. And so as I get better over time, I don't know what I would have done differently to start out, other than like standardize more and maybe like diversify a bit more. But that's I think what I would have done. Yeah. Okay, what else? All right, this has gone a little bit long, damn near half an hour. So, real quick, here are a few things I've gotten recently. Firstly, is this pen. This is one I've wanted for a long time. This is a Pelikan M1000. It's black and gold, so my Black Pen Society friends will be perfectly happy with this. It has a big nib on it, which is not quite as shiny as I was expecting it to be. The one on my 800 is much shinier, but I think maybe it just needs a buff. I don't know. But it's got a medium nib. It's got a little bit of flex to it. I like it a lot. It's great in my hand. Perfect size for me. Anyway, I'll be showing this at some other time when I've had more time to thoroughly review it. And then I got these two in a trade. I used to have a blue Custom 74, and there was somebody on the Slack channel who really wanted a blue Custom 74, but didn't want to pay full price for it, and had a couple of Custom 74s that she could do without. She's like trying to cut down, so she traded me two, kind of 2 for 1. We switched some nibs around and that sort of thing too. So now I have a full black and gold one, and I have the clear, and I'm perfectly happy with these. The blue is very cool, and I love the blue. Maybe I'll buy another one eventually, but I kept my medium nib. So this is the same medium nib I've been using for a long time, just in a clear body instead of blue. And then this one has a very different nib. This is, as you can tell, come on, there we go. It's got a bit of a bend to it. This is a sort of custom done Waverly nib that she said Dan Smith did for her, and it started out life as an extra fine. This is a very flexible extra fine, and I think the Waverly point on it is very cool. It's a little bit off center, like it kind of goes a little bit like this. So maybe I'll have Dan Smith like take a look at it. That's me looking at the nib. That's my looking at the nib face. But it's pretty cool. I haven't had a whole lot of chance to use it, but it's a really wet extra fine with a bend at the end, and I like the way it writes. It's really cool. So anyway, those are the 3 things that I've gotten this week. So it's been a big pen week, even though I didn't go to a pen show. So anyway, I've got a bunch of stuff coming up soon. I've got one from Kenro. I've got this awesome Aurora I need to talk about. I've got these 3 pens that I borrowed from my friend Greg Mitz. I got to get those back, but I want to show them on here first. So anyway, that's what's coming up soon. Thank you for making it all the way through this video. If you did, if you didn't, well, I'm not talking to you, I guess, right now because you're gone. But anyway, I hope that this has been a good and informative session, and that this video comes out well. And I hope that y'all send me more questions, and I will do more Q&A videos. There's a lot of questions, so I decided to answer them all. So anyway, there you go. That's it. I'm Mike. This has been Ink Dependence. These are some Star Wars Legos. I got a B-Wing back here now instead of the TIE Advance that I had before. So, you know, if you like those, that's a little bit of that. All right, that's it. I'm out. Peace out. Bye-bye.